And we're live. Excellent, 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 excellent. I imagine that when I go live for a class period, I imagine that there's a cheer that people can audibly hear across all of Barnegat. And they start chanting. I don't know what they're chanting, but they're chanting something. I don't know. Could be anything. For the 4 people in attendance today. Man, look at that, people. Oh, goodness gracious. Anyway, it should go up in a few minutes. I'm going to give you an update, obviously, on fantasy. There's a big glare in the middle of the screen, but there's a lot of developments in fantasy football that I'd like to talk about. That's actually going to lead into what we're going to be doing next week. But I'm not going to give too much away. I'm just going to give you like little snippets as to what we're doing. I have a simulation using fantasy data that I would like to show you. But that, again, will be in a little bit. We'll see what happens when that actually does go through and whatnot. I would like to give you a little bit of practice with what we're doing with angles and whatnot. I have a Sokotoa example with field goal kicking that I would like to focus on. Obviously, you do have an assessment due for me tomorrow. You have an assessment due for me tomorrow that obviously you do need to get done. And I do have a video that I would like to view with you. And I do have, obviously, since most of you are all of you, since all of you are online, instead of having you watch a screen of a screen, I am going to allow you. I'm going to post the link in the chat so that you would be able to watch that video separately and then come back so that we can discuss. But I will, of course, play that video live on the screen. But again, instead of having a screen watch a screen, I'm going to post the link so that you can watch it on your own. Or you just have to mute my video, but leave it open. Watch the field goal kicking video that I have for you, and then come back into our chat so that we can discuss that video when the time is appropriate. But, we'll get there when we get there. So, first things first, let's talk about fantasy football. The week has finally wrapped up. The Baltimore Ravens, my team, has been strucken with the COVID, and it is fun. No, it's not at all. As numbers are rising across the nation, my team got hit pretty hard. Now, thankfully, well, not thankfully, I shouldn't say my fantasy team suffered as a result. My fantasy team suffered as a big result of the Ravens not being able to field a team, basically. I'm going into my lineup just to see who I had playing this week. Or who I had the bench. I had Lamar Jackson on the bench. I had James Conner from the Pittsburgh Steelers on the bench. I had the Ravens defense on the bench. Although I think they actually did pretty well compared to the Browns defense, but I digress. Yeah, the only Raven I had going, I think, was Justin Tucker. That sucks. But whatever. Here are your updated standings. Now, yes, there is 1 week to go in the regular season. However, these teams right here are your playoff teams. Unfortunately, the teams who are 5-7, there's no way that you can get in the playoffs. I apologize. To get in the playoffs, obviously you do have to have either a tied or better record or more points scored, which, Quinn and Pringle and Kalagna Archer, they were close, but no cigar, unfortunately. Yeah, that's where we're at. What's interesting? What's very interesting to me is the fact that you have these weekly high scores right here. Weekly high score, you had the high score for the week. And every single team that had at least one weekly high score made the playoffs. I find that very interesting. Now, not only that, again, first round bye, want to talk about first round bye, Snowden Baker, Pollock DeLeo, right now you're in position for the first round bye. What's interesting is that Pollock DeLeo suffered what they call, not this week, but the week before, they suffered a worst break, which was they had the second highest score of the week and they still lost. man, those teams are pretty tough. Del Percio, Guarino, you guys are close, but you're about 120 points behind in points for, even though you have a tied record. So there's 1 week left to go. You still have an opportunity. To get that first round bye. Me, I have an opportunity to tie the record, but there's no way I'm going to get that first round bye. Top 2 teams get the first round bye. Here's the playoff bracket as it stands today. Let me flip the screen over, and you can see the playoff bracket as it stands today would be something like this. Now, of course, this could change. This could absolutely change. There's a lot of positioning going on here, but this is the playoff bracket as it stands today. Fun stuff. Very fun stuff. Oh, rankings. Now, yes, there's 1 more week to determine who's going to be the MVP, but the power rankings, scroll over here. There we go. There are the power rankings as of today. What's really interesting to me, I got beat this week pretty badly by Quinn Pringle. Quinn Pringle, you guys are actually second in the power rankings right now, which is remarkable. You're not going to make the playoffs, but it's pretty remarkable how strong your team ended up near the end of the season. So sad. So sad. Me, I'm all the way down here, but I'm going to make the playoffs. But that's just me. I don't know. What's really interesting is that I was able to use some of my knowledge from statistics in order to do what I call a simulation. I was able to use certain random number generators in Excel, and I was able to simulate the whole season, basically. Now, I haven't shown you this just yet, simply because it's not finished. But I just wanted to kind of show you that I am simulating the last week of the season to determine what final records would end up looking like and things of that nature. I don't know. And this thing can actually refresh a bunch of times. But according to all of my simulations, it looks like Snowden Baker's going to get the number 1 seed. And it looks like Pollock DeLeo is going to get the number 2 seed. That's what it looks like as of now. But again, I still have to run a bunch more tests on this thing. I don't know. But it's a really interesting random number generator based on current record and current average points for. And it does. Oh, it's so much fun. It does project an 0-13 team. No matter what I do, it's always going to project that 0-13 team. Yeah. I mean, it could be close. I don't know. Maybe they will pull it out. Maybe they will actually pull it out and get that final win. F9. Yeah, F9 actually does that. Oh, yeah, there is a simulation right there that actually does give them the win right there, which is interesting. But I don't know. It's up to Buka Cernansky. Anyway, I digress. Okay. Reminders for the yous that are coming in right now. For those of you that just joined our chat and joined our class. As I said before, you do have an assessment due for me tomorrow based on football calculations that we've been doing. We are going to wrap some of that up today with some field goal kicking that I have referenced. We're going to take a little bit of notes from sample problems that I have set up for sample field goal kicking. Again, if this were real life, we can actually go up to the stadium and do some stuff up there, but again, can't do that. And like I said, there is going to be the video as well. But again, I just want to emphasize, you got to get that major into me. You got to get that major into me. Please make sure that you are doing that. Next week, we are going to be deep diving fantasy football statistics. We are going to be deep diving fantasy football statistics next week. It's going to be nice. It's going to be really nice. We're going to be able to do an analysis of our season, of your individual team's season, based on scores that you've been able to get. And it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to be able to identify a lot of different things, correct decisions, wrong decisions that were made over the course of the season. It's going to be amazing. But again, that's next week. Today, we're going to be wrapping up some stuff with some angles and SOHCAHTOA and all of that fun stuff. So, if you would, ladies and gentlemen, for a very brief time, I'm going to need those notebooks out and open. Walking over to my desk, Checking my coffee. There's my lid. There's my lid. Excellent. Okay. So I don't know if you know the dimensions of a field goal post. Field goal post. What am I doing here? There we go. Goal post. I couldn't even think for a second. I was just trying to do too many things at once. Originally, the goal post was a very strange mechanism that they had. They talk about it a little bit in the video, so I'm not going to go into the details of how people used to kick things. But just to say, the goalpost used to be right on the goal line, which led to a lot of people running into the goalpost, which is very dangerous, to say the least. Eventually, they smartened up, and they moved the goalpost back, which was smart. But it did make the job of kicking field goals a little bit harder. Now, as those of you that have watched this class, you know that I do have a certain affinity for special teams. I think special teams is the heart and soul of any team. Field goal kicking, punting, kickoffs, returns, anything of that nature, anything that's special team related, I am just a huge fan of because it's such a chess match at that point. Last time we were here, I had sent you that Google spreadsheet where you could try to figure out, okay, what velocity, what angle do I put on the kick in order to attain that hang time and have the ball land within 10 yards of the end zone. I love it so much. Now, back to this. Let's talk about a goal post. Now, first of all, a goal post in the NFL now currently looks like this. Something similar to this. This is not drawn to scale. The posts are actually a bit taller. The bar from the ground up, is approximately 10 feet. I'll zoom in a little bit on this picture. The actual uprights from here to here are 35 feet. That's from the bar up. And the width of this actual thing is 18.5 feet. These are the dimensions of a goalpost. Now, as a field goal kicker, the width of this thing means that you have a certain margin of error. You have a certain margin of error in order to get this thing done, in order to actually kick the ball through the uprights. Now, in the past, and again, they'll go into this in the video, in the past, there was a certain technique for doing so. And they actually do bring up Dempsey, the guy with like half a foot, which I thought was really interesting. But today, the NFL record in a game is 64 yards by a Denver quarterback. Surprise, surprise, Matt Prater. Denver quarterback, Mile High Stadium, thin air, all that fun stuff. But the real question is, depending on the distance that the field goal kicker has to kick, what is the margin of error? What is the margin window of an angle that they can be off by in order to make this kick? Assuming that they have the height, assuming that they have the distance, were they accurate? Now, you all know me. I'm a Baltimore Raven fan. Justin Tucker, the most accurate kicker in the history of the NFL. Amazing guy. But how accurate does one have to be? That's the big key. I mean, yeah, you can kick this thing as hard as you want, but so just kind of setting up a little bit of a triangle right here based on the image of the field goal post. I'm going to set up a little triangle right here. Now, this dotted line that I'm putting in right now, this dotted line represents the distance that would have to be kicked. Now, keep in mind, depending on where you are on the field, there is an additional 10 yards that have to be reached to account for the end zone. They added those 10 when they moved the goalpost back. Now, in terms of this triangle, we can make that 90-degree angle. I can make my theta right there. That's my theta. That's the variable with the line through it, thing of that nature. And we can figure out whatever this distance is, which in this case would be 9.25 feet. 9.25 feet would be half of that 18.5 feet. We don't know how long the kick is going to be, but let's set something up. Tangent of theta is equal to SOHCAHTOA opposite over adjacent. This is what we got set up. Now, again, depending on the length of the kick, this is going to change this calculation a lot. The way that we would solve this, theta would be equal to the arctangent of 9.25 over x. This is what we would have to solve. A very basic kick in the NFL, a very basic distance that you would have to hit as a field goal kicker, maybe like a 30-yard field goal. A 30-yard field goal. I'm just making that up. Now, a 30-yard field goal, I would have to convert it to feet in order to fit these calculations. But a 30-yard field goal would be the same as 90 feet. A 30-yard field goal would be the same as 90 feet. So if that were the case, then I would have to calculate theta to be the arctangent of 9.25 over 90. Now, again, depending on the distance, that number on the bottom of the fraction is going to change. So I'm going to bring up my calculator. And this is something that you would have to do as well. I'm going to go into my mode. And I'm going to have to change radians to degrees. Make sure that you're doing that when you are actually doing these calculations. Make sure that you're changing your radians to degrees if you have to do these calculations with SOHCAHTOA. I'm going to do arctangent, which is second tan of 9.25 divided by 90. And it spits out theta is approximately 5.87 degrees. Zoom back a little. There we go. 5.87 degrees. So if you're kicking a 30-yard field goal, you can either miss about 5 degrees to the left or 5 degrees to the right and still make the kick. If you go 6 degrees to the left or 6 degrees to the right, you might hit the uprights and clearly might miss it. 5 degrees is not that bad. 5 degrees is better than the from the putt that we had to do for $1 million. It's better than hitting the puck into the hockey net from the mid part of the goal of the hockey rink. It's better. I think it's actually better than the soccer kick too, but I digress. Let's go a little bit farther. Let's do a 45-yard field goal. A 45-yard field goal. 45-yard field goal is not that bad. It's a little bit more difficult if you've watched football. If you're going to do this calculation with a 45-yard field goal, you should know that that is 135 feet. And we got to redo the calculation. Redoing the calculation, theta is equal to arctan of 9.25 now over 135. The only thing that changes is the bottom of that fraction because we set everything up for the field goal kicker beforehand. Well, if I were to do that arctangent now with 135, you can see that right there. I'll zoom right in so you can see exactly what I'm calculating. Again, it's not radians. You got to make sure it's in degrees in order to get this answer right. Chapow. Clearly, you have a smaller margin of error. Now, theta is equal to 3.92 degrees. The farther that you have to kick the ball, the smaller the window that you have to be off center. You've seen this in various NFL games. You've seen this where the kicker is just inside the uprights or something along those lines. Or maybe it just hit the upright and by pure luck, it bounced through the uprights or something along those lines. I love field goal kicking. It is insane. I'm not that good at it, but still. Now, obviously, this is assuming that everything goes right. It's assuming that the snap goes off. It's assuming that the holder actually does it correctly. I don't know. I don't know if you guys are too young to remember the movie, having watched the movie Ace Ventura. Maybe you've heard of it. Ace Ventura. The villain of the movie was basically the former kicker for the Miami Dolphins who had a vendetta against Dan Marino. It's a pretty funny movie. Laces out. Anyway, let's go a little bit farther. Let's go something that not many NFL players have done. Let's go with a 60-yard field goal. Now, for the longest time, the NFL record was 63, and now the record's 64. But let's go a 60-yard field goal. A 60-yard field goal would now be 180 feet. It's still possible, but that angle is going to be a lot smaller. That angle is going to be a lot smaller. 9.25 over 180. Make sure you do the conversion. You got to convert that thing. If I did this calculation again with 180, now all of a sudden, it's 2.94 degrees. 2.94 degrees. I'm not going to go any farther than that, simply to say that, again, clearly, the farther the distance that you have to kick, the smaller the angle that you have to miss. It's a smaller window of opportunity. It's really crazy. And again, it's so crazy how, again, someone like Justin Tucker could be hitting 50-something yard field goals and be accurate, so crazily accurate. But again, the closer you are, the better it is. The farther you are, the harder it is. It's just the way this thing goes. So here's what I would like to do. As I said before, I do have a video that I would like to show you. But again, I understand that it's a bit difficult watching a screen. Oh, there's more people here. The connection keeps going in and out. Oh, that's not on me. Can you guys hear me now? Hopefully you can hear me now. Just giving it a moment. If there's anything to do with the internet connection, that's not on me. That's on the school. Because clearly I've been doing this thing over and over again. Not getting a response. Can you all hear me now? I have the chat open at my desk, but I have the volume down. I'm going to check that. I have the volume down so there won't be echoes and stuff like that. Let's just see what happens. Yeah, I can hear myself. So no one's going to say that they can hear me at home? How do I know it's not your internet? Still no one's responding. But that was about 10 minutes ago. Huh. All right, well, I'm going to keep going. This video is saved for posterity on the playlist of this class. So, again, it should be saved. I'm going to move forward with what I got to do. And then if you guys want to put into the chat or type into the chat, that's up to you. Anyway, I do have a video, like I said, that I want to show you. Now, this video, I am going to type the link. Or not type, I'm going to cut and paste. I'm going to cut and paste the link to this video into the chat of this class. Now, the thing that I want you to know is that it may be easier for you to watch this video if you muted. Hold on, how do I copy this? There we go. If you muted, come on, you muted my video. There it is. Copy. And okay, it says this is good. Paste. Okay. So I'm going to play this video on my screen. And you can watch this video at home. It is a lengthier video. Lengthier? Is that even a word? I don't even know. Let me just get past this ad real quick. And then I'm going to play it up on the thing over here. Come on, you. Stupid Geico. Cool. Yeah, so it's a 15-minute video. I'm going to play that thing. You can mute me. And then after the video is done, I am going to obviously still be here. And I am going to discuss a few things from this video before we wrap up for the day. So watch this video. I'm going to play it here, but you can watch it on your own on a separate window. Go.
But it's still one of the most essential ways of scoring in American football. In 2018, 73 NFL games were decided by 3 points or fewer, more than any other season in league history.
So the kickers responsible for making field goals, otherwise known as place kickers, are under a lot of pressure to perform.
Yeah, there's a lot of stress that goes into it. You're either the hero or you're the villain.
A well-placed kick can make or break a game, or sometimes even a season. And the longer a kicker's range, the greater the strategic threat they pose.
The NFL's most lethal place kickers have sent balls flying through the uprights from 40, 50, even 60 yards away.
In 2013, Matt Prater kicked the longest field goal in NFL history when he hit one from 64 yards.
Now look, a 64-yard field goal is already a tremendous feat of athleticism. But coaches, players, and sports scientists all agree that it's only a matter of time until someone kicks one even farther, potentially a lot farther. In practice, some players have made field goals from more than 80 yards away, but that's without any pads on, without a crowd cheering or booing at you, and without a defensive line doing everything in its power to block your kick. What we wanted to know is, what is the absolute physical limit when it comes to the field goal? So today, we're going to look at why making a field goal from 90 yards away is almost impossible.
To find out what it takes, I talked with one of the best place kickers on earth.
I equate it to golf or to baseball. If things aren't lined up, it doesn't matter how strong you are. It's not going to be as good of a kick.
Took a crack at hitting a 25-yarder myself.
Come on!
And discussed the elements of a perfect place kick with a biomechanist.
We need the ball to launch with a high velocity at the right angle and be accurate.
Harrison Butker has mastered all of those elements. Butker is the starting kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's known for having one of the most powerful and most consistent kicks in the NFL.
People don't realize how much work we actually put in. Just because we can't come out and do a lot of kicks in practice or even in the game doesn't mean that there's a lot of stuff we can't do on the side as far as watching film, taking care of our body, doing mental reps. I mean, kicking it, a lot of it is mental.
We met up at Cole's Kicking Camp in Whitewater, Wisconsin, where he talked me through the finer points of place kicking.
Back to forward, but also from this kind of left to right motion from back there around.
Before we get started, here's a summary of what a typical field goal looks like. There's the snap, the hold, and the kick, all of which take place in about a second. So let's say the snap and hold are good. Now let's look at how to approach the ball.
You've got me here at the 15-yard line, so 15 plus 10 for the end zone. This is 25 yards.
25-yard field goal right down the middle.
I like your confidence in me.
Yeah,
but
you got the soccer shoes on, man. Maybe you're fooling me.
And yes, I was wearing soccer shoes. A lot of professionals actually do that. They wear a soccer cleat on their kicking foot because it gives them a better feel for the ball, and a football cleat on their plant foot to help them get better traction. But the truth is, no shoe on earth was going to make up for my terrible form.
No. All right, so we need to get it up.
So Butker gave me some tips, starting with my foot placement.
Your plant foot, you want facing straight down your target line. And then you're going to want your kicking foot to be perpendicular.
I was also using the wrong part of my foot.
No, you're going to want to have like way up there. That's what a lot of people don't realize, that we're making contact with the ball all the way up there. That's the strongest part of your foot, right there on that bone.
Come on.
Went straight, you had the height. It's looking better. High school extra point, that's good.
In high school, that would have been good.
Exactly.
Too bad I'm 32. Okay. Finally, Butker gave me some tips on where to stand. I had been backing up way behind the ball, thinking that a running start would help boost my power. But Butker says that's not always the case.
Well, the most important thing is your contact. So even if you're sprinting up to the ball, if your contact isn't perfect, then it doesn't matter how much momentum you had, because the farther away I get, the more opportunity I have to mess up or just being consistent. Really, as long as that last step's good and you get good contact, that's the most important thing. But also in a game, you have 1.3 seconds from standing still to making contact with the ball. So if you're super far away, it's going to get blocked.
Right.
So you kind of have to be closer as well.
Hey!
Nice.
All right.
Look at that.
That was our last ball.
Last
Okay.
ball. We're out.
That was great. Okay, so I literally just kind of put together all of the tips that you gave me in the last second there. Next, it was Bucker's turn. Why don't you show me how this is done? Here. Now, it's the off season for Bucker, so he wasn't about to blow his leg out showing me up. Still, he made it look effortless.
Not the greatest, but it went through.
And once he had warmed up, he made it look just as easy from 50 yards. Which makes sense. He's one of the best kickers on the planet. But why is Butker so good? To find out, I talked to biomechanist Chase Pfeiffer.
He stops there at the ball and rotates around. So he's using his plant leg to whip his kicking leg around.
In 2015, Pfeiffer developed an advanced motion tracking system to help deconstruct the flight of a field goal. This helped him determine optimum foot speeds, impact locations, and launch angles. Now, there are three things that really set Pfeiffer's research apart. Number one, most studies on kicking have focused on soccer, not American football. Number two, most of those studies were performed using two-dimensional analyses. Pfeiffer's analyses were done in 3 dimensions, which gave him a lot more insight into the dynamics of players' kicks. And number three, in addition to studying the form of elite place kickers, he also built this. It's a field goal bot. And unlike a human kicker, it can kick a football the exact same way every single time.
Humans are unpredictable and inconsistent. And a mechanical robot, same thing every time.
By cross-referencing his player data with his robot data, Pfeiffer was able to analyze how things like foot placement, foot velocity, and overall coordination affect the quality of a given kick. The most important variable of all, impact location, where a player's foot makes contact with the ball. His research shows that the key to a monstrous field goal boils down to 2 things: how much force you can deliver to the ball and where you deliver that force. Pfeiffer says that when an elite place kicker's foot makes contact, it's usually traveling between 42 and 49 miles per hour, and that can deliver more than 3,000 newtons of force to the ball. The faster your foot moves, the faster the ball leaves the ground, and the farther it travels. Now, the ideal launch angle for distance for a projectile, as any freshman physics student will tell you, is 45 degrees. But when you account for drag, Pfeiffer says the ideal launch angle for a football, toppling end over end, is actually closer to 43 degrees. And to kick the ball at that precise angle, you need to kick it right here, about 2.5 inches off the ground or a quarter of the way up the ball. Kicking the ball on this sweet spot helps achieve the ideal launch angle while minimizing the foot velocity required to maximize distance. In other words, hitting the ball right here lets you kick it farther, easier.
If you say that's halfway and a quarter is about right there, that's generally where you want to hit it. I mean, if you hit it a little low, it's going to be a good ball. It's just going to be spinning more. But if you hit it too high up, that's when you're going to hit a line drive knuckleball.
That precise combination of power and foot placement is what enabled Matt Prater to kick the longest field goal in NFL history in 2013, when he sent the ball flying through the uprights from 64 yards away. Now here's the thing. Place kickers have actually been kicking about that far for almost half a century. In 1970, New Orleans Saints kicker Tom Dempsey blasted a 63-yard game-winning field goal against the Detroit Lions. His record stood for over 40 years. And there are a few things that make Dempsey's record remarkable. For one, he was born without any toes on his kicking foot and was outfitted with this custom shoe.
While it's unclear if that gave him an unfair advantage, the NFL eventually created a rule that standardized kicking cleats.
The other thing that's incredible about Dempsey's record is that since he set it, despite improvements in equipment and training, almost nobody has been able to outdo him, at least not during a game. And of the players who have come close, most of them were kicking at Mile High Stadium in Denver, Colorado, where balls fly farther through the thin air.
Dempsey, on the other hand, set his record at Tulane Stadium in New Orleans, just a few feet above sea level. Since then, nobody but Prater has managed to kick the ball farther during a game. But one thing kickers have improved over the years, their accuracy.
For as long as the NFL has been keeping records on field goals, place kickers have been hitting their marks more and more consistently, from every distance. Today's NFL kickers are as successful from 50 yards as 1970s kickers were from 30. And a lot of their accuracy has to do with how they kick. Prior to the 1970s, most place kickers would run at the ball head on and kick it with the tips of their shoes. It's called a toe kick, and while it can be powerful, it is also notoriously inaccurate. But starting in the late 60s, players began making contact with the ball high up on the instep of their kicking foot, the way a soccer player would.
You have a lower launch speed, but you have a much more consistent impact with that larger area. So the end result there being increased accuracy.
By the mid-1970s, most place kickers had begun to favor the soccer kick over the toe kick. And today, nobody kicks with their toe, at least not in the NFL.
And that's because when it comes to place kicking at the professional level, accuracy matters more than power.
Guys in the NFL don't necessarily have the strongest legs. There's a lot of guys in college that have these massive legs that might not make it in the NFL because they don't have the accuracy. So if you want to have a long career, you got to be able to be consistent over a long period of time.
Once you're able to kick with power, place kicking is essentially a geometry problem.
The angle of your kick needs to be steep enough to clear the line of defenders trying to block your kick, and it needs to be straight enough to avoid flying too far left or right of the goalposts. And the farther from the field goal you get, the smaller your margin of error becomes. A 20-yard field goal has to stay within a 17.5-degree window to count. But from 60 yards, that window shrinks to just under 6 degrees.
Say you're hitting a 60-yard field goal. If that thing's slowly tilling to the right, you might miss that, but if it was an extra point, that would be good. If that was a 40-yarder, that would have been good. So you just have to be a lot more accurate.
You might be wondering how these guys handle that kind of pressure. The answer, actually pretty well, which might be what sets pros apart from the non-professionals.
As soon as I start jogging on that field, I completely forget about everything. Ideally, I don't even hear the crowd noise, and I'm just focusing on what I can control.
And there's research showing that the key to success at that level is to replicate game time pressure during practice, even if it's just in your head.
What I like to do in practice is I say, okay, I have 3 or 4 balls I'm going to hit from these spots. I run on. I mentally almost try to envision that there's a crowd there. I try to put some pressure on it, and then also quality over quantity.
So let's say a place kicker comes along with unprecedented power and accuracy. How far could they realistically kick? And how precise would they need to be for their kick to count? It turns out the answer to both of those questions is pretty straightforward.
According to Pfeiffer's calculations, a record-breaking 70-yard field goal kicked at sea level without wind would require a foot speed of around 49 miles per hour, delivered directly to the ball's sweet spot. And an 80-yarder would take a foot speed of around 56 miles per hour. And both of those speeds are well within the realm of current human ability. In fact, the foot velocities of elite soccer players have been clocked at more than 60 miles per hour, which in theory is good enough for a 90-yard field goal. Now, it's true, soccer players have a few distinct advantages over place kickers when it comes to kicking a ball far. Number one, they're not outfitted in full pads, which can really slow down your foot velocity. Number two, they're not trying to clear a wall of gigantic humans who can use their hands to block your kick. And number three, unless they're kicking, say, a penalty kick, they're typically not performing in the same sorts of high-stakes, all-or-nothing scenarios that place kickers are. And yet, place kickers are definitely capable of record-shattering distances today. Check out this footage of Bucker blasting a 90-yard, 4.4-second hang time kickoff. But of course, kickoffs don't need to be as accurate. So then the challenge becomes placing that kind of kick between the uprights while under the pressure and constraints typical of a field goal. Remember how the margin for error shrinks the further away you get? Well, from 90 yards, the window of your lateral angle shrinks to just 3.9 degrees. Is it improbable? Yes. Impractical? Absolutely. In fact, it's hard to even conceive of a game time scenario in which any coach would even think to attempt a field goal from more than 70 yards away instead of going for, say, a Hail Mary. Not that it hasn't happened. In 2008, while playing for the Oakland Raiders, kicker Sebastian Janikowski was called on to attempt a field goal from 76 yards, the farthest attempt in NFL history. We couldn't actually afford to pay the NFL for the footage of that kick, but just take our word for it. It came up short. The point is, all of the factors are there for somebody to come along and kick a precedent-shattering field goal.
I would not be surprised if at some point in my day I saw somebody kick a upper 80s, maybe even 90.
I think they could do 85. I mean, guys are doing up to 90-yard kickoffs, so why couldn't you do an 85-yard field goal, you know?
Yeah.
I definitely think 85, you could do it. If you had a really stiff back wind, it was a sunny, warm day, you had a nice ball, you had tall grass, I mean, everything was perfect. I think 85 you could do.
But until all those things line up, remember that what players like Harrison Bucker are doing today is already almost impossible.
Nice. Hopefully you should be wrapped up with that video right now. Some of you, I'll give you kind of a moment to get back in that thing, or to get back to this chat, of course. Something interesting that they said in the video, they measured the angle slightly different than what we did, but both of us are still correct in what we did. Let me show you what I'm referring to. Flip this. All right, there you are. Okay. In our calculations, we found a 60-yard field goal would have a 2.94 angle of error, I guess. Assuming that you wanted to kick that ball absolutely straight. Now, let me draw this from a different perspective. So here's the ball. And let's say here is the uprights. I don't know, like boom, 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 boom. I don't know, whatever. I'm just making that up, right? And let's just say that that is 60 yards or 180 feet. Now, the idea, and I'm going to draw this a little differently, but the angle of error that you have that we found approximately 2.94 degrees. And in the video, they said a little under 6 degrees because they weren't measuring the same angle that we were measuring. We were measuring this angle right here, this theta. And we got 2.94. When they were saying the lateral angle, they were referencing this whole window of opportunity right there. That's what they were referencing. So 2.94 is just under 3 degrees. If you double that, it's just under 6 degrees. So it's exactly what we were referencing. It's just that they were looking at it from a different perspective. Now, the way that one calculates it, that 6-degree thing that they did, is exactly the same way that we would calculate it. We would calculate the half measure of the theta and then double it to get the lateral measure that they were referencing. Also, this now kind of looks like a fish. Just saying. I don't know. But I find that very interesting just because, like, field goal kicking is crazy because it's like, you know, it's either you make it or you don't make it. Field goal accuracy wiki. Field goal percentage. Oh, no, this is basketball. I want football. Football. Here we go. They do have a little bit of statistics here at the bottom. There we go. There's the Matt Prater kick. Jason Elam, I knew about that kick. I knew about the Sebastian Janikowski kick and the David Aker kick. I didn't know about that one. That's kind of cool. A bunch of people that kick 63s and 60s. That's crazy. Anyway, longest field goal records. Missed returns. No, I want accuracy, the percentage. Field goal range. Nah, probably not going to find it. Oh, maybe here. No, definitely not. Anyway, but yeah, Justin Tucker, most accurate of all time. It can't be here. No, it can't be there. Anyway, I'm not going to keep you much longer. I just wanted to look up Justin Tucker just because he's the man. NFL records, yeah. Most accurate kicker in NFL history. That's all it says. It doesn't give you anything beyond that, just being that he is the most accurate of all time. And he's the man. Just saying. Anyway. So a couple of reminders before I let you go. Number one, you do have that assessment due for me tomorrow. Number two, next week, we are going to be deep diving fantasy football statistics, which is going to be great because we will have a whole season's worth of data now, opposed to just a couple of weeks at the beginning of the season when we were doing baseball. And we'll kind of see where this leads us. Next week, you should be back with me unless something drastically goes wrong and we get another email at 3:00 on a Sunday saying, hey guys, JK. I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. Anyway, I hope you all have a great day. We will see you another time. Email me if you have any questions.